Yo, what's going on, everybody? Today we're going to be watching Ben Shapiro talk to Megyn Kelly on her show. I find it really funny how Ben Shapiro squirms when he tries to answer most of her questions in this video. I'm going to try my best to do commentary over it, and we're just going to be analyzing what he said. Obviously, you read the video title. Ben Shapiro has recently been talking more and more about Israel. He's become super nationalist for Israel, which is pretty weird for an American politician. And the big one, he has picked up on Nick Fuentes. Now, he has a bit of a history with Nick Fuentes, but now he's just really going at him with the mainstream media. He's trying to let everyone know that Nick is dangerous and people should stay away from him. And apparently in this video, he calls him out. And he has a lot to say about Nick Fuentes, who he is, what he stands for, and a lot to say about Tucker Carlson and a bunch of other politicians and just Americans in general. I'm going to warn you, there's going to be a lot of pausing in this video because I got a lot to say about what Ben Shapiro is talking about in this video. But let's just get right into it.
Appearances together, and that's how I knew about him, because he was saying absolutely terrible things about you.
Nick Fuentes,
and I am going to show a video, please forgive me, of one of my first introductions to this guy, Nick Fuentes, and what he was saying about Ben. This is a video of him showing himself playing Grand Theft Auto, right, a video game where you shoot people, and he's pretending that this character in the video is Ben. Let's watch.
Before the clip plays, really, out of all the clips of Nick Fuentes you could have picked out, you picked one of him playing GTA to be the thing that lets everyone know he's radical and you should stay away from him. That's an interesting selection.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm pretty sure this was Nick when he was like 18 or 19. He was really young in this clip.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that makes me laugh and laugh. That's a funny one. What a chance encounter that was. I think I just saw Ben Shapiro.
And it goes on. It goes on.
I mean, I would hate for people to believe that the Nick Fuentes sort of...
I mean, let's just acknowledge the clip first of all. Such a weird thing to pull up a clip of someone playing a video game and doing something inside of GTA of all things, and to try and make it sound like Nick has some obscure motive with it being Ben Shapiro. I'll admit it's a weird thing to say. I mean, it's not the most normal thing to say, but really, out of all the rhetoric that Nick communicates online, this is what we're going to be pointing out. Very, very odd.
My problems with Nick Fuentes are about me, because they really are not. They are about the fact that Nick Fuentes is a truly horrifying person who believes truly horrifying things. And again, there is a reason.
And you show a clip of him doing something stupid when he was barely an adult in GTA to prove that.
Why Charlie Kirk despised him. There's a reason why every mainstream political commentator has been highly critical of him. It's the reason why. These are not arguments. This is not a person.
Okay, so mainstream people criticizing Nick Fuentes. This is why no one takes him seriously. This is why people make a mockery of Nick Fuentes. That's what Ben Shapiro is getting at. I find that to be an extremely disingenuous take, and listen to what he says right now. He says that these are not arguments. Let's see what he finishes the sentence with.
Who's making arguments? He is a Hitler-loving troll, and I say that advisedly.
So, I mean, I'm pretty sure that Nick Fuentes doesn't just shoot people on GTA and name them as political figures, and that's the entirety of his content. I'm pretty sure that's not the full spectrum of his content, so it's already I mean, these guys are part of the mainstream political media. They've been trained for years to propagate disingenuous clips of people and things that are not flattering to show an audience like this. But it's such a random, out of context clip taken from like 7 years ago, and somehow Ben Shapiro is trying to correlate this clip to who Nick Fuentes is as an entire content creator in person. I mean, that's not only absurd, it's ridiculous, and one could even argue it's defamatory claims about, someone through a disingenuous lens. It's also awfully convenient to call someone a Hitler-loving troll without showing any context of video footage of what they say or what they believe in. It's just absolutely ridiculous. If you've ever seen Nick Fuentes, he does farm a lot of clips unintentionally by saying what most people consider absurd statements on his streams and whatnot. But if you've ever heard him debate or go on a show, he's very respectful, and he's made it very clear that he's not a supremacist. He's a Christian nationalist, and that's really his position on politics. But we're off to one hell of a start with Ben Shapiro trying to frame Nick Fuentes as a politician and a person in this light. It's absolutely ridiculous, but let's continue. And like I said, there's going to be a lot of pausing, so if you don't like that, this video is not for you.
Literally says on his show that he loves Adolf Hitler. Okay, so the reason this has come up in recent weeks is because Tucker, your guest last night, decided to have him on last week and to completely gloss him, in my opinion. And you can make up your own opinion as to what you think Tucker was doing.
Gloss him. I watched the entire interview because I thought it was very interesting that Tucker Carlson was actually entertaining a mainstream interview with the Nick Fuentes, who's become so notorious on every single platform. And after watching the interview, they didn't really seem to agree on everything. They didn't really seem to have this overwhelming admiration for each other. They just talked like two normal guys. And two, frankly, pretty normal politicians considering the landscape that they're in. Nothing about it seemed over the top or abnormal. I think Ben Shapiro is really going for the smear campaign, and we might talk about why he has an incentive to do that to Nick Fuentes later. It's pretty obvious to most people, but I still might incorporate that into the video.
That interview, but I know what it looks like when Tucker Carlson decides to be an aggressive interviewer, when he decides to ask difficult questions of people. Tucker is eminently capable of doing that. He did it to Ted Cruz quite thoroughly. But he decided for any number of reasons, and I try not to attribute motivations to people, that he was going to treat Fuentes with...
I try not to attribute motivations to people, but the entire video is going to be him attributing motivations to things that Americans do. You'll see that he attributes motivations to what Megyn Kelly does and what she feels. Same with Nick Fuentes. Pretty much everyone who's involved in one way or another, retrospectively or not, in this video, Ben Shapiro assumes motivations for. But I digress. Let's hear Ben keep making his points.
With kid gloves, that he was going to not ask him about any of the things that I've just mentioned, literally any of them, and to essentially normalize Fuentes, act as a sort of gateway drug, or as what I've called Tucker, as an ideological launderer of bad ideas over the last couple of years. And this is not coming from a place...
Normalize Nick Fuentes. What does that even mean in this context? Like, he's some dangerous... Are his ideas so dangerous? Because I've never seen a clip of Nick inciting violence that wasn't a joke. Maybe it's floating out there somewhere online, but I've never seen anything like that. And I think it's quite contrary to the beliefs of our country to make the statement that someone is so taboo or exotic that even having them speak or give commentary on something is somehow inherently akin to a gateway drug. I mean, that's a little weird, but I'll let the video continue.
Of animus for Tucker on a personal level. I've known Tucker for a very long time. Tucker and I, whenever we're in personal situations, we get along great. I think I saw that Tucker talked about how we were at Charlie's memorial in the vice president's box together, and he's correct. I mean, we saw each other, we said hello, we talked, it was very friendly, and all of that. And it's also true that a couple of days after Charlie's murder, he reached out and he called me and he said, listen, I know that we're at odds, and we've been at odds for a number of reasons, mainly political. I mean, again, on a personal level, I'd go fishing with Tucker anytime.
Yeah, sure.
The real question is, for me, I got into this business because I care about the ideas and I care about the ideals.
Yep.
And so when you're determining what is conservatism, what should the future of America look like, and where do you draw the lines, those are the questions that I need to answer in my job. For me, my business is really not about friendship. I have lots of friends, people who I love.
I mean, I get the sentiment that Ben is pointing out. You don't want bad actors to be involved in your space if you're trying to make an antiquated point or you're trying to organize together and, push forward a movement. I completely understand that. So then you have to pose the question, if Nick is such a bad actor and what he's saying is so harmful, it should be pretty easy to shut down his rhetoric just by disavowing it and making your argument against it to prove how foolish and silly it is in the face of a real solid foundational argument. But Ben won't do that, and Ben is afraid to do that, and I think it's because he fears that if more people are exposed to the likes of Nick Fuentes, more people are going to adopt his ideology, because I think he knows as well as I do, as well as many do, that a lot of people don't disagree with everything that Nick Fuentes has to say. He is not some contraband drug that has nothing of substance to add to the political sphere. There are some things that a lot of people agree with, a growing majority of young Americans. He knows that, and that's why he doesn't want to platform him, because he knows it's dangerous to the campaign that he wants to run.
Grand politics and don't believe they should be leaders in the conservative movement, for example. And that to me is the real question. In any case, Tucker reached out. He said, we've had a bunch of disagreements, and what if we could put those aside and align toward the DSA in particular, is what he mentioned. And I said, Tucker, you're totally right. Let's do that. That would be great. In fact,
the TSA?
The DSA, the Democratic Socialists of
Why
America.
the TSA? How did that bring you together?
The Democratic Socialists of America. And the reason
I know.
Yes, and the reason that I'm taking out
TSA
my
only
phone
divides people.
is because, yes, the reason I'm taking out my phone is because I don't just, I like to evidence what I'm saying with, actual evidence.
Sure, that's why the clip of how dangerous Nick Fuentes is, the one that you selected to show people, was one that was irrelevant to what he stands for. It was a clip of him playing a video game. But yeah, continue.
So I texted him, and the text exchange was very nice. I mean, here's what the actual text exchange went like after the call. So I texted him, and I said, thanks so much for calling. It means the world. It truly does. Should we do a show together talking about the DSA threat, Democratic Socialists of America threat, and orienting in the same direction? Happy to do whatever it takes to bring everyone back together for the fight that matters. And Tucker then wrote back, thanks, man, I appreciate it. I'm going to spend the next week or two thinking about how to be most effective. The country is clearly on the brink. I reached out repeatedly. After that, nothing happened. And again, I thought it was a good idea at the time. I think I felt differently after I saw what he did with Nick Fuentes, and after he proceeded, in my opinion, to spend the subsequent weeks doing literally nothing to fight the left.
What did he even do wrong by talking to Nick Fuentes? He argues this gateway fallacy that Nick Fuentes is somehow this harmful gateway into things that are very, very dangerous. But what did Tucker Carlson even do wrong by talking to someone? The very notion of that is relatively extreme.
I say this with sadness because Tucker used to be, I think, a deeply important part of the conservative push to win.
Hey, that's code word for Ben Shapiro basically saying Tucker Carlson used to pretty much feed into all the propaganda that we like to spew towards people. And he was a really good tool for anything that we wanted him to be a tool for. Whether it was building this or manufacturing that, we could always count on him to just repeat the bullshit that we say. I would argue that Tucker Carlson has actually had more constructive commentary on politics ever since he left Fox News. He's been more insightful, he's been more diverse, he's been more eloquent, he's covered more topics, he has more freedom. I don't feel like this is true at all.
The number of times that Tucker Carlson has mentioned Zohran Mamdani since October 5th on his show is once. And it was in the context of Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson talking about the appeal of Zohran Mamdani. Just by way of contrast, not because I'm a perfect representative here, but because you've talked about Zohran Mamdani a lot. A lot of us have. Since October 5th, I did 17 separate shows on Zohran Mamdani, including 4 in the last week before the election. Okay, because when you're orienting against the left, you really should orient against the left.
Okay, so a lot in there. I think, just to be clear, so the breakdown
wait a second. I don't know why I let that slide. Ben Shapiro is saying we must orient against the left. You really need to commit to that role. But in the same breath, Ben Shapiro is also then trying to weed out bad actors in his own community and his own faction of politics because he finds it useful to get rid of anything that's harmful to his side. So why is Tucker Carlson not adamantly attacking someone on the left while he's doing other things? Why is that such a grandiose evil? It doesn't make any sense.
Détente after Charlie was him interviewing Fuentes. Like, was that the next thing that happened that led to the blow up?
I mean, yes. I mean, I had not spoken a word. There
So
were
it wasn't
things
that he attacked you, like, or you had something?
No, I don't care about
It
people
was that
attacking
interview.
me, and I don't think Tucker cares about people attacking him. I mean, like, again, we're professionals. We're in a business where people comment on what we say publicly. Again, this is why I think you and I differ on our angle with regard to, for example, Candace Owens. I think that what Candace Owens is doing right now is evil. It is evil what she is doing right now. Okay, and I say that again.
But what
I could make a whole separate video on Candace Owens and how the mainstream media has reacted to what she has been talking about and what she says. I could literally make an entire video series on how crazy everything surrounding Candace Owens has been. But one thing that I have noticed is that I've been told by multiple content creators, multiple news outlets, multiple people or institutions from every form of media that I consume that Candace Owens is insane. And I've seen clips of her being a bit sporadic, spurging a lot, and going on diatribes that don't really make too much sense. But there are some things that she's talking about that, if true, and if there's any validity to them whatsoever, are extremely alarming and very important for everyone to acknowledge as something serious and to actually have a conversation about. And this is something that I've noticed more and more with everyone is we love to coddle a certain faction of people on the political spectrum whenever it comes to the left. And by the way, I'd like to preface, I'm not going to hide my political beliefs. I'm not right-leaning, I'm not left-leaning. I follow a very specific codex of politics that I can get into in a different video. But I find it extremely concerning that whenever we're talking about stuff that is really important, that we outcast certain groups of people, but then we don't outcast other groups of people that we all still believe have a really insane train of thought on how they discern between different policies and the decisions that they make. So Candace Owens being this exception on the right, where we're just supposed to shun her and we're not supposed to entertain anything she's saying, I understand the argument. If she sounds crazy, it would be beneficial for everyone to just ignore her. But so often a repeated trend throughout history is that someone sounds extremely crazy because their eyes have been opened to something, or they're very afraid and very isolated from everyone, so it kind of perpetuates the craziness even further. And then we all look back at what they said 30 years later, 40 years later, and we stop and think, whether it's through a TikTok clip or something you read online or a commercial or an old documentary using footage from an interview, we all stop and say, wait a minute, that sounds pretty relevant to what's going on now, or holy crap, they were way ahead of their time. That is such a common phenomenon nowadays. I don't think we should be discrediting to anyone. I think cancel culture as a whole just needs to completely go away, and if someone has something to say, and it is crazy, we should be able to shut that down very quickly and very effectively using logic and reasoning. I don't think we need to do a whole shun campaign or paint people as crazy. I just want you to think personally as you're watching this, how many people do you know about throughout history or American history or even in your lifetime that have been painted as a psychopathic figure in media or online. And when you actually found out what they were talking about or what points they were trying to make, you really didn't think it sounded all that crazy at all. Maybe it was presented in a bit of an insane way, and through media coverage, it made them seem even less stable. And I'm not insinuating that Candace Owens isn't crazy. Maybe she is. But I just think that this philosophy covering politics or really any people's opinions in the modern day is destructive to everything that our country is founded upon. And I feel like this has been a mistake that's been made throughout all of recent history, and I just find it crazy that what's truly crazy is that we haven't learned from it. But we'll continue playing the video. I know this video is going to end up being super long. Hopefully you enjoy that. I fucking do.
I didn't opine on whether it's evil or not, but my position is it's really none of my business. And
Why is it? But I have a question. Why is it none of your business?
I mean, she's not Candace Owens. That might be why. That might be why it's not her business. She doesn't know Candace Owens very well, so Megyn Kelly claims it's not really her responsibility to argue on behalf or against Candace Owens.
Comment on these things for a living.
I'm not mother of the internet.
No, but if this were on the left and somebody were accusing Charlie Kirk of his wife having murdered him, I assume that you would be talking about it. No, but if this were on the left and somebody were accusing Charlie Kirk of his wife having murdered him, I assume that you would be talking about it.
Is that what Candace is accusing Erica of?
Yes.
Of murdering her own husband?
She's accusing TPUSA insiders and other members of the right wing, including Seth Dillon, of being involved in the murder of Charlie Kirk, yes.
Okay. Like I said, I don't take in...
First of all, I don't know whether or not that's true or false. I have heard her make claims akin to that, but the specifics of what she's arguing for, I'm not in a place to comment on that. However, I would like to point out that what I just mentioned, maybe if she has a legitimate correlation to someone that did something, or a connection that she had in the past with evidence that she can cite, I'm not saying that we're obligated to entertain stuff that sounds crazy. All I'm saying is that, like I said previously, throughout all of modern history, people who had something very insightful about industries or political ideas, or just things that are happening in the sphere of our world in general, have been silenced or made into martyrs, and I think that's possibly what's going to end up happening to her. Before this whole situation, the entire conservative movement had acknowledged Candace Owens as one of the brightest shining stars in their community, and as soon as she makes an allegation or starts bringing up things that are really controversial, everyone discredits her entire career, her sanity, everything. It's ridiculous. I think there's a way better way to go about that. A way better way. And I think that people not even being able to formulate arguments against her or to be able to entertain the thought and shut it down, it is harmful, and this historically is how governments and socially speaking, how people within countries get into really, really, really mean-spirited and heated disagreements at a very large level. So I've already spoken my piece about that whole situation. I don't need to talk about it anymore. I just find it ridiculous that there isn't a more authentic or constructive way that we can go about covering stuff like this, especially if Candace Owens is doing something super wrong. Being able to make an example out of that and to completely destroy it and shut it down would be way more advantageous than to ignore it, because when you ignore it, that makes people question a few things. Why are you ignoring it? Why are you trying to frame it in a really defensive and dangerous light? What could she be saying that is so wrong that you don't even dare to dip your toes into the water? That's what it makes a lot of people think nowadays, including myself, because of how many lies that we've been told by pretty much everyone who has a platform.
That content, which is an honest statement. I don't have time to watch Candace's show.
I believe you. I believe you. But the point that I'm making is that
what I
that
understand
friendship
Candace
should
to
not,
have
in
been
our
doing.
business, I think it's important. Listen,
Candace
friendship
and I are
should not
friends.
trump.
We don't even know each other.
I understand, but even with Tucker, friendship should not trump our manifest requirement to speak out when people do and say things that are both detrimental to conservatism and morally wrong.
Okay, so I don't totally disagree, but I think the way of handling that, at least for me, is much different. So saw things go south between you and Tucker, at least from my vantage point.
And just
when-
real quick, being the arbiter of how people should handle things in a political sphere or any consolidated space is a really weird thing to do.
You disagreed on Israel. That was obvious. And
Well-
he was, well, let me just make my point.
Sure.
And so he was saying things that were critical of Israel and our policy towards Israel. And then you did one show where you did what I thought you should have done if you disagreed with him, which clearly you did, which is say what you believe and what you think is factual and like educate your audience on what you think are the real facts and give them the evidence for it. But you named him and it felt like an attack. And that to me was the beginning of the end, where he was like, now it's on. Because he felt personally attacked by you, as opposed to just challenging his idea. I think you named him and you kind of diminished him. And, you know, he's an 800-pound gorilla, and if you mess with a gorilla, he's going to fight. And to me, that's where it started to go south. And because I remember that day being like, oh, shit.
Well,
I don't want to see this.
But here's the thing. I would urge everybody to go back and listen to the show that you're referring to, where I criticized Tucker's ideas, not Tucker as a person. Tucker then responded
Fair.
by claiming that I do not love America. That is a direct quote. That I do not love America because I was spending too much time covering the October 7th attacks, and then proceeded in January to then say that I wanted his children to die in a foreign war. Okay, so those are different.
That's a
Okay,
rhetorical.
alright, time the fuck out. Not only did Tucker Carlson not frame it that way, but what he's pretty much implying is that he doesn't want us to be involved again with another foreign entity in the East. It is not our responsibility, and it's not necessary for us to continue to prosper as a country. It's just completely unnecessary. We've been doing it for so many years. It's gotten us nowhere. It's harmed our country. It's harmed international relations. It has done nothing good. And to be honest, Ben, here's the huge issue, is that you really talk a lot about how much you think Israel is the greatest country on the entire face of the planet. And forgive me and everyone else, including Tucker Carlson, for questioning where your allegiance lies when you continue to spew rhetoric like that about some foreign country while you continue to criticize America, or rather act somewhat apathetic to what they do, as long as they are acting in the best interest of Israel. It is really strange to do that, especially as an American politician. I don't want anyone who is more concerned with another country to be giving any of us advice on how we should move forward for the betterment of our country. That's so strange.
During the October 7th attacks, and then proceeded in January to then say that I wanted his children to die in a foreign war. Okay, so
But
those are different.
That's a rhetorical.
No, it is
point.
not. I'm sorry, it's not.
he's-
An attack on motivation is a very
But
different
his
thing from an
point-
attack on an idea.
His point was that you were sounding like a neocon, and he's upset with anybody who wants us to get too
Yeah,
involved
sure.
in Israel's conflict because he feels it endangers American
Listen,
children.
That's exactly
okay.
that
the
is
idea-
exactly what he meant. That is exactly to a T what he meant. And Ben knows he's being disingenuous. He just really wants to win the optics argument.
that number one, the idea that I want the United States to be directly involved in Israel's conflict
I
is
get
not
it.
true.
No, I know that, Ben.
I've been urging Israel to get off of American aid for literally as long as I have been active in politics.
Even the way
making-
he frames that, pay attention to the wording. He wants Israel, he urges Israel to get away from America's aid. From an American's perspective, that sentence would be phrased, well, we want America to stop giving Israel aid. Even the mindset of how he views the situation is completely warped from the average American's perspective. That is alarming. And Ben, don't pretend like in the past you haven't adamantly urged for America to support Israel as a whole. That's just a flat out lie. It's just, this is just insane.
That I want the United States to be directly involved in Israel's conflict
I
is
get
not
it.
true.
No, I know that, Ben.
I've been urging Israel to get off of American aid for literally as long as I have been active in politics.
But I'm making
That
clear
is
what
not-
his point was.
But
Like,
my point is that that's not his point. And again, none of
It
so
is
we
his
disagree.
point.
Well, we disagree on the interpretation of what Tucker has been doing for
Correct.
the past 2 years, and
Yes.
it's very difficult for me to believe that Tucker is merely anti-Israel when, for example, today in his newsletter, I mean, I can directly quote it if you'd like. In his newsletter today, he claimed that Zoran Mamdani is not anti-Semitic. This was his
Well,
newsletter
first
today.
of all, I love this framing by most Jewish politicians or people that are hardcore extremist Zionists that think that the word Semitic is responsible for only categorizing Jewish people or the state of Israel as a whole. That is not what Semitism is. That is not the entirety of the definition of the word. So that's already disingenuous because of Zoran Mondanian and his background as a person. But as far as I'm aware, I'm not a huge Zoran guy, but I don't think he's done anything that was particularly anti-Semitic.
This morning. I mean, I'm happy to read the text. It's a little extraordinary because again, it is kind of shocking stuff. So here's what Tucker Carlson wrote in his newsletter today, or what his newsletter says under his name. He said, "Is the incoming mayor a fan of Israel? Does he want America to fight its wars? Not particularly. But a Jew hater? That's a different conversation. We've never seen anything to suggest he falls into that ugly camp. If we're talking about fighting the left, defending Zoran Mamdani, who literally said that he has no opinion whether Hamas should disarm, who posed alongside the 1993 World...
Good. Zoran Mondani shouldn't have a fucking opinion on an international affair when he's the mayor of an individual city. What the hell are we even talking about, man? When did it become... And this is just further evidence that Ben Shapiro has other priorities other than America. Why would we want a mayor of one of the largest cities in our domestic nation to have opinions and be hyper-fixating on international affairs with a country that's overseas that we do not need to interact with? Like I said before, the mindset in comparison to a normal American is completely backwards.
Trade Center unindicted co-conspirator who would not disown globalize the Intifada, who suggested that whenever there is a New York Police Department boot on somebody's neck, it's an IDF lacing the strings, to suggest that that's not anti-Semitic in any way. No way.
Okay, but listen.
Or when I'm
going to give you a defense of Tucker here.
And how is
I don't need to defend Tucker.
Again,
how is anti-Semitism anti-American? And that's the true crux of the argument. Ben Shapiro doesn't care about America. He doesn't care about any of our governmental policies or what's best for us. He cares about his people and his country, which is Israel, not America. He is not an American. He will never be America first, and he will keep letting cracks show in all of his arguments and all of his interviews. It'll keep becoming more obvious to everyone. That's the exact reason he doesn't want someone like Nick Fuentes to have a platform and be able to spread his messaging, is because he knows it would be destructive to him.
But I'll just say, I think in general, because I know him and I listen to him and I understand generally where he's coming from, he would say his problems are with Israel. And he would say that shot that Mamdani laid against the IDF is a shot against the IDF and Israel and how he thinks they're pro-war, not against Jews.
Okay.
And I
he
think
can't even control himself to let her say it, because he's so ready to play defense on who his real masters are, and it is not American government or politics.
Tucker Carlson finds himself in complete alignment with Zoran Mamdani. It is very difficult for me to believe that he does not agree with Zoran Mamdani.
He's not in 100% alignment.
Of the same place that Charlie was getting to toward the end of his life, the same place that some people had tried to drive me.
Look at his face.
Which is, you're under withering, nonstop accusations of being something you know you're not.
Well,
but from some people who you love and who you've been protecting, at least in my case and Charlie's case, for 2 years, who you've been completely defensive of. Charlie and I both...
Everyone is tired of that, and it looks so suspicious to attack people who are generally supportive of a race of people or an ethno-state or a different government at all. People who are typically super supportive of these people and their ideologies, to then go and attack them once they say one thing that isn't exactly aligning with the rhetoric that they want you to spew, that is way more suspicious than anything Tucker Carlson said, than anything Candace Owens has said, than anything Nick Fuentes has said. That is extremely suspicious. At least with most of the other people, we can pretty confidently say that they're pro-American. What the hell even is this? I'm sorry if this video went on for longer than you wanted it to. I know it was really long. I had a lot to say. But to be honest, I prefer it that way. I prefer to be thorough. I prefer to get out everything I have to say on this topic. Hopefully, I represented some people's opinions fairly well. This is definitely how I feel about the situation, and I think people are sick of hearing this rhetoric. People are sick of hearing these types of arguments and insinuations. It's ridiculous. No one's buying this anymore. No one's buying what you're selling, and he's a salesman that desperately needs a sale. And I find that it's just going to keep getting worse for people like him and the mainstream political parties and their commentators, because the cracks are showing, like I said, and this whole institution is crumbling underneath them. And everyone's starting to figure out that they all eat at the same dining table. You know what they say? Oftentimes, there was that old clause. It was a very old saying. The more you try to hide something, the more it tends to reveal itself, despite your best wishes. And that can't be more true with Ben Shapiro and the type of rhetoric that he's spewing to the masses. But anyway, I think I'm probably going to end the video there. If you made it to this point in the video, since I'm a no-name nobody, thank you for doing that. That is commitment, or maybe you just enjoyed what I was saying. It doesn't really matter. Either way, I hope to keep making content like this. It's been really fun trying to stick to a schedule to upload. If you guys did get to this point in the video, or you did watch, let me know anything else you want me to cover. I'd love to one day just get your guys' suggestions, or maybe stream the videos while I'm making them so I can interact with you guys and give you a chance to share your opinion as well. This was awesome. This was awesome for all the wrong reasons. I loved making this video. Alright, I'll see you guys later.